Hello Jawas! Now it's time to look more at the non-electrical parts of the Jawa sound mask. In this video we're going to build this assembly. So let's take a quick look at what's on the finished product. Starting with the back, we can see the softball mask origins of this, with nice padding on the forehead and chin, generous adjustable straps, and even the ponytail hole here in the straps if you need that. You can see this nice padded bag that we've zip tied to the straps. This is actually your battery holder. With this arrangement, it sits nicely kind of behind your head, more in the nape of the neck, and its weight back here helps to offset the weight of the speaker, which is going to be in the front. Also from the back here, you can see the two 5-volt fans. This is actually the fan assembly that we built in the electronics video, but we find it convenient to go ahead and attach it to the mask, to the body of the mask, and you notice with zip ties here. Turning around to the front, we've got a couple of corrugated plastic panels. The main one here serves as a mounting point for our LED eyes and eye covers, while the one on the top keeps your hood up a bit and makes sure you don't actually see your hair kind of over the top of the mask. I'll talk more about these panels in a second, but you can see that they're attached to the bodies of the mask with zip ties like the fans are. So let's talk about the parts that go into this. This is an unmodified mask, obviously a Markwort protective mask for softball. We chose this because it's lightweight and comfortable, and unlike metal wire masks, this is made of polycarbonate, so we can easily cut it up and modify it for our needs. This particular model is a large. They also come in medium. The list price for these runs about $40, which makes it the most expensive component of our Jawa sound mask, but you can sometimes find them for around $20. These come in a variety of colors for both masks and straps. For the straps, it doesn't matter much, but for the mask, you should probably go with black, clear, or this one is smoke. If you look at this in profile, the jaw protection juts out quite a bit, so we're going to do some modifications to this mask to make it a bit more suitable for our purposes. Now, this is the mesh bag that we use to hold the battery. When we first started the Great Jawa build in 2018, the battery we were using actually came with a bag like this. So it was a natural choice to use it. This is no longer true, but you can get this bag, which is about 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches, in a 6-pack for $8 on Amazon. So a little bit more than $1 a piece. This is the fan assembly that we've looked at before. So let's talk about these corrugated plastic panels. You can find sheets of corrugated plastic at a craft store, or even sometimes at Home Depot, and it works pretty well for our purposes here. In particular, it's nice and rigid for mounting things, and when we want it to bend, we can cut it halfway through, and it still stays together well. There are patterns for these two pieces on the Great Jawa Horde website, but we include them in our parts kits when we can. We call this one the faceplate, and because it's a bit complex, we actually produce them locally on a computer-controlled router. You don't need to get that fancy. Really, you just need to cut out, the edges. There are places here where we've only cut halfway through, and you can use a drill to make the holes. For the Jawa crown, this is a bit simpler. It's actually too large to fit on our low-end router, so we just cut these out with an X-Acto knife and then use a drill for the required holes. Before we start in on modifying the mask, I've removed the straps and the chin rest just to get them out of the way, keep them clean, and make modifying this mask a little easier. Now, we want a nice flat plane across the front of this mask for mounting our Jawa faceplate. So we're going to cut this top two protective bars, and just to make sure we're kind of on a reasonable line, I'm going to go ahead and mark across this. So we will cut here, we will cut the bar below similarly, And then we're going to cut each of these three verticals to finish opening up the front of this. In order to accomplish this, I'm going to use a Dremel with a cutting wheel. This is a messy business, so I've shifted away from a previous video venue to someplace that's more easily cleaned up. As always, when using high-speed tools, you're going to want to wear eye protection and a mask to avoid breathing in the dust. So let's get to it. Okay, so that's the most significant modification to this mask, but before we put the Dremel away, I'm going to do a couple more things. I'm going to cut off this a little bit because we don't need quite this much, and our sound electronics are a little wide, so I want to make sure I have enough space in between these two things for that to mount. And also, we're going to end up mounting our fans in these places, but these little, supports here make that kind of awkward for these fans to sit nicely flat. So I'm going to do a little bit of cutting for each of these on each side, just so that the fans fit into this position a little better without this plastic piece interfering with their rotation. So let me get on with that. All right, that's that. We're going to move on to drilling a couple of strategic holes, and we're going to use the components that we've got here to figure out exactly where we want them. Okay, we're done with the Dremel, and now we're ready to drill some strategic holes. Before we start, let's look at our drill bit size. These are 4-inch zip ties, which is what we're going to use to secure everything in this video. You just want to make holes that this zip tie will fit nicely through, so choose your drill bit accordingly. Now, the first thing we're going to think about is how to attach our Jawa crown, and for that we need one hole just about a 1/4 inch above the eye opening, so right about here. And that's that. Now, for the sides of the Jawa crown, we're actually going to use these slots on the side of the mask. So that's all we need for that one. To attach the Jawa mask, what we want is a hole in the middle of each of these side things. And then to attach the bottom, we're going to need a hole roughly at the base of each of these verticals. So let's get that done. All right, so lastly, let's talk about the fans a minute. You're going to want to trim these to try to pull air from the outside of the mask. So you're going to want the intake portion facing out. And experience have shown us that you really want them to blow towards the back of your head. Mounting this in such a way as they might blow up into your face is really uncomfortable in a long troop, will dry out your eyes, etc. So we want to mount these, this one, like this. We've got the blower coming out here, so I'm going to want a hole here and a hole here. Now, the zip ties have to have a way to come out and then back again, so here we can go over here, but here I'm going to actually drill a second hole for the zip tie to come back through. On this side, similar story. I want this blowing towards the back intake here, so I'm going to drill a hole roughly right here for this zip tie, and for this one, roughly there, and another hole for the zip tie to go back through. So let's get that done. All right, so that's that. What remains is to zip tie all of our items onto this. Now I will note that the first time you're putting together a mask, just looking at this, each piece individually and drilling them as you go is the best way. Now if you were doing a large group build, then you want to drill one mask, use it as a prototype, and then have folks drilling holes in the same place all the way through. Just make sure that you get the positioning right so that you don't have any significant regrets. Okay, that was the finish of the mostly messy stuff, so we've moved into the comfort of our climate-controlled Jawa Labs area. Let's get started on the zip tying. I'm going to do this without commentary because mostly I think it's self-explanatory, and well, you guys have probably used zip ties before. All right, so that's that for our corrugated plastic. Now let's move on to reinstalling. I'll reinstall the straps and then put our bag in place in the back. Now for this bag, we tend to have our power cord coming in off the right of the mask, so I'm going to orient the opening of the bag in that direction, and I'm just going to work a zip tie through this mesh, which is sometimes a little bit easier to say than to do. And then attach this, one of these on each side, and really only tighten it enough to hear it so that it stays there loosely. Same thing on this side. Work the zip tie through the mesh. Attach loosely. And this is our completed assembly. Okay, so there's actually one more thing that it's useful to do at this stage that I'm going to talk about before we put this aside. I mentioned that we'd like these fans to pull in air from the outside of the mask. In order to help that process, it's good if we can kind of seal these holes around the fan. Now that's a hard thing to do from the outside because we don't want to touch this rotating bit, but we can do it from the inside with some tape. Now what we're going to do here, this is gaffer's tape. Gaffer's tape is used in the film industry. It's a cloth, usually black tape cloth, and it's not reflective like much of, say, the vinyl duct tape is. So, and it also tears nicely by hand. So what we're going to do is just tear bits of duct tape, try to tape around the edges of this mask just so that it pulls a little bit more from the outside and pulls air inside rather than vice versa. Should go without saying, you don't want to tape over the output hole here. But for the rest of this, I'm going to continue without commentary. All right, so that's sealed these up a little bit. You can see a little bit of the white backing from the outside, so I'm going to put a little bit more tape in a couple of places. And we do also use this tape in a few other ways, like to cover up bumps like this, where it's might get snagged on the fabric. But that's really more aesthetic, and I wouldn't worry too much if you don't do that. Anyhow, all for now. We'll move on to electronics.